Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess2Progress with number 21 in the series Viewers Games. This one is from Matthew from Australia. Dear Rick, I've really enjoyed both your channels. I am Australian and play on a few sites but not especially frequently. I'd consider myself improving but very much a beginner. I played this game in March at the Internet Chess Club. There was no particular time control. It was a correspondence game and the game took about 6 weeks to complete. Thanks for your consideration, Matthew. Let's look at Matthew's game. Matthew was black in this game and his opponent is named Payman. d4, knight f6, knight f3, d5, c4, e6. We are in the Queen's Gambit declined. Bishop g5 from white, bishop e7 from Matthew. e3, Matthew castled, knight c3, and here Matthew played knight e4, which according to my database is the 5th most popular move. The other moves are h6, kicking the bishop, knight bd7, developing the knight, and b6 and c6 are also popular moves. But knight e4 is fine. It's not a bad move at all. Now Payman took on e7, Matthew took back with the queen, c takes d5, and this is an important moment and Matthew dealt well with it. You cannot take that pawn back because then you lose a pawn with knight takes d5. So you have to come up with something else, and Matthew found the right move in this position, taking on c3 first, b takes c3, and only then take back the pawn on d5, and that makes sure the material remains equal. Bishop e2 from white, bishop g4 developing his bishop from Matthew, white castled, and now knight c6, which is the first move that doesn't look completely logical to me. Knight d7 makes more sense. That knight then can go to f6, that's a nice square for the knight, a natural square. Knight c6, it's standing in the way of the c-pawn. It doesn't have any good squares to go to from there. So knight c6 is not the best square for the knight. There's also a practical problem with queen b3. Attacking two pawns, attacking the b7 pawn and attacking the d5 pawn, so black now has a problem. If Matthew had played the natural knight d7 on the previous move, and then white plays queen b3 attacking two pawns, then black could have played knight b6, solving both problems at the same time. Both pawns are now protected. So back to the move in the game, queen b3 attacking two pawns. It looks like black is going to lose a pawn, but there is a move that keeps the game in the balance. Not an easy move to find. And also the follow-up, I'll just give a variation to show why this is a good move. Queen d6. Queen d6 is the move that Matthew should have played. It protects the d5 pawn, and if Payman then takes the other pawn, queen takes b7. There is rook fb8. The queen has to go to a6, that's the only square. Then Matthew can take on f3. And of course you want to take back with the bishop, not to damage your pawn structure. But after bishop takes f3, Matthew has a surprising move, knight takes d4. And there are tactics. The queen is hanging, so queen takes d6 makes sense. You have no time to take the knight back. You don't have no time for c takes d4, because then you will lose your queen. So queen takes d6 makes sense, but then Matthew has an in-between move. He doesn't have to take back the queen. He can take on f3 first, because it is check. Then Payman has to take back on f3. And only then do you take on d6. Material is equal. We're in a rook endgame, which is more or less even. but this is not an easy combination to find at all, starting with queen d6. But that is the move that keeps the game in the balance. Difficult move to find, and I don't blame Matthew for not finding it. He played bishop e6, protecting the d5 pawn. He thought that d pawn was more important to keep than the b pawn, and he's right about that. White took on b7, knight a5, hitting the queen. Queen went to a6, and knight c4. White took on c4, Matthew took back, rook ab1, and now bishop g4. That's a bit of a strange move. Matthew had brought back the bishop to e6 to protect the d5 pawn, which is now on c4. And now he plays the bishop back to g4, leaving that c4 pawn alone. If white takes it straight away, then Matthew can take on f3, that's probably what he had planned, and damage white's structure, g takes f3. But still, it's another pawn in the bag for white. White played it better. He played knight e5 first to avoid Matthew being able to damage white's pawn structure. Now the bishop is hanging at the same time that knight attacks the c4 pawn a second time. Matthew played bishop e2, hitting the rook. Rook fe1, bishop d3, and now there's no way Matthew can avoid white winning a second pawn. Knight takes d3, c takes d3, and queen takes, and white is 2 healthy pawns up. Queen a3 from Matthew, queen c2, protecting the pawn on a2, c5, rook b3, queen a4, rook eb1, all very logical moves from white. White plays a very solid game. c4, hitting the rook. There's only one move because the rook has to protect the queen, but rook 3 to b2 is good enough. Naturally, Matthew does not want to swap the queens. Keep the material on the board. Queen a6, rook b7, queen d6, and queen a4. Here Matthew resigned. He said, "I resigned on move 26. I had lost a couple of pawns for no compensation. I'm of the opinion my opponent's play, being a stronger player, may be instructive. His rating is calculated as 329 points on mine. Looking at the game, I can see my blunders that cost a pawn each were around pushing too aggressively, weakening squares, etc. Kind of a gift to my opponent from a weaker player." Those were Matthew's words, and he is right. White is winning a third pawn here. Both the a7 and the c4 pawn are now attacked. Black has no compensation, and this game is beyond savable. White's pieces are more active. He beat 3 pawns up. There's really nothing to play for here. White's king is safe. There's no weaknesses. And I think Matthew's decision to resign the game makes sense. It was a good game, Matthew. Yes, you played an opponent who had over 300 points more than you, but you played well. Knight c6 was really the only move I can criticize. Knight d7 is a lot more natural than knight c6, which stands in front of the c pawn, and that knight doesn't have any good squares from there. That's not a good move. Apart from that, I thought you played well. You played a stronger opponent who played very solidly and took advantage of your small mistakes. Thank you, Matthew, for sending me this game all the way from Australia. Hope you enjoyed Matthew's game. Hope you learned something from it. If you liked it, please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess2 Progress channel. I'm looking forward to your comments. And if you liked the video, please share it on YouTube. You also may want to check out my Chess2 Impress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick from Chess2 Progress. Thank you very much for watching.